Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the domestic violence propaganda machine. And we've got a number of propaganda machines that are running, globalist funded or globalist directed in the West, particularly the West, and the gender, racial, and climate change are the big three prongs of the devil's trident they're attacking the Western society with. And in this essay, I'd like to talk about the domestic violence one. Now, in Australia, I don't know about elsewhere in the world, so I think it's the same in Britain. There's something called White Ribbon Day, which has really become a week and then became a month. And it's a bit like the Black History Month and all those sorts of things. It's just an excuse to disgorge the most outrageous propaganda. But it's coming at us 24/7. It's just non-stop from all directions. Local newspapers, regional television stations, main TV stations, online, main newspapers from the big cities. It's just a never-ending barrage of lies and propaganda. Now it's it's very lavishly funded, this so-called domestic violence thing, and there's a number of pieces running around, and one was in a local newspaper that I saw. It's one of many, so I could have randomly picked any of them really, but just picking that one. And just a little aside, the main propaganda advocate for the domestic violence stuff, or VAWA as it was called in the United States, was Joe Biden. So when he wasn't shilling for the credit card companies, and he was running around pushing social division with in regard to gender and families. And then he sort of later on, after he'd done that, he picked up the pushing racial division, and anyone that didn't like it was a white supremacist, fascist, Nazi, and so on. So Biden's been a long time, flunky and stooge filleting the globalists on demand. So, and he's of course performing the ultimate final function for them now. But so just looking at this, just to give you sort of the overview. Now, I first started noticing this, 25 years ago, something like that, the propaganda on this, and it seemed incredible then. But we've had an endless propaganda campaign, and billions and billions of dollars spent in just Australia alone. But somehow, according to the propaganda, the problem keeps getting worse. So for every $1 billion that's spent, the problem seems to double. And just get worse again for the next billion, double again, and so it's at crescendo proportions now, in spite of all this money and all the many thousands and tens of thousands of people that are supposed to work. And they've got workshops going around to the police, and some of these police officers, the constables and the lower level officers, they're not high IQ people, and so they get taken into these bullshit courses. Did you know that 1 out of every 2 men is a violent abuser? And so the cop probably thinks about, well, I don't know anyone. It must be any of the people I don't know. And so the propaganda doesn't stack up. But when your audience is simple enough, you can kind of get away with it, I suppose. But I'm sure all the cops have to sit there through it. Don't believe it, or don't believe a word of it, especially as they've got these angry butch dyke lesbians doing the courses. So anyway, just in the local one local area, and I've got a local newspaper here, they allege there's over 600 incidents of domestic violence every month. This is sort of the headline, the screaming headline. Now, the population in this particular area is a little over 300,000. So I don't know what the rate should or shouldn't be, but they're claiming it's 600 a month, and it's now at epidemic proportions, so they're claiming. And it's been this epidemic proportion for 25 years. I mean, there'd be no women left in Australia, at the rate of domestic violence that they claim. There'd be not a single one. So it's obviously nonsense. And they do the normal stuff: exaggeration, outright invention, lies, and they do this bullshit modelling that they say, modelling says, and all this sort of crap. Modelling says that 99% of women who are beaten to death every day don't report it, and this sort of thing. So, but no matter how much money is spent on it, it just keeps getting worse and worse. Then more and more money is spent, and so on. It's providing some very lucrative careers for a lot of butch dyke lesbians, gender studies types, and so on. So, Now, just looking at this article, which is about 1,000 words or so, I guess. COVID lockdowns, they say it's just hit a high, they're just very recently. So they don't mention COVID lockdowns, but if you're prepared to dig around and go online and dig up some numbers, there's been certainly an increase in reports. Remember, this is not incidents and factually proven, but reports. And this is what the police statistics are claiming. Now, there's a unit inside the police department which is populated by some very butchy dykey sort of people, and simple people who've been suckered into the propaganda, and they're the ones who are making these numbers. So you'd already have cause for concern. There's no objectivity to that data collation. But let's run with it anyway and say that it's accurate just for the moment. Now, if you're prepared to dig around, you find that less than 20% of these 611 alleged incidents, less than 20% of them involved any form of physical contact. So now physical contact can be a push or a shove or something. It doesn't mean that somebody got shot or beaten over the head or something like that. So it can be any form of physical contact. And remember, these are still allegations. There's no evidence at this stage. Now, less than 10% of those went forward to court charges. So again, you have to dig around for that. So you need to sort of understand that of the reported incidents, only 1% are going to court as an actual act of violence. Now, there's already laws for this. You assault someone, it's assault and battery. That's a crime. That's a crime and should be treated as such. Doesn't matter who it is. But they say they have to make special laws for special protections and special ideological considerations, have to create special courts and things like that, which they want to use to activist judges in these courts to bump up the prosecution rates. Now, there are things that they don't mention, the lack of mentioning the effect of the COVID lockdowns, where people have been locked up in their houses for months on end. That's bound to create the possibility for discord. So, and people shouting at each other, how dare you burn my toast? That's hardly domestic violence. But now, what they don't tell you, and so this is where. Now, look, if this domestic violence was as bad as they say, they wouldn't need to tell lies. They wouldn't need to invent things. They wouldn't need to omit critical facts. The facts alone would stand up to any form of scrutiny. But they don't. They have to make all these lies and inventions, like there's white supremacists everywhere and these sort of things. It's all lies. Now, but it's everywhere. It's all pervasive. So what they don't, these are things they don't tell you, which again, you've got to go online and dig around and make a few phone calls, that sort of stuff. 3/4 of all these allegations of violence come from government housing estates. Now, these are the very poorest people, people with a lot of mental problems, bipolar disorder. They're completely dependent on government welfare. There's a lot of substance abuse there. Drug gangs run around there. And there are sometimes, knifings and shootings even at some of these estates. So they're very high crime, very down at heel people that are very low IQ, a lot of them mentally retarded, a lot of them on medication that they forget to take, these sorts of things. So 3/4 of all these allegations, all these reported incidents come from these government housing estates which are in a particular area. Now, they don't say that. Now, they should mention that in any articles, so that gives you some perspective and context. So, well, it's not a widespread thing, but they want to give you the impression it's widespread. It's everywhere. There are white supremacists around every corner, domestic violence, wife bashers everywhere. So that's what they want, because it creates social discord and it creates social division, and this is what they want to do, and this is why they tell these lies. Now, another thing they don't mention is almost half the allegations came from just one handful of very mentally disturbed women. So you're looking at one woman who's making 20, 30 allegations. But instead of pointing that out in the article, they're suggesting that 611 completely separate incidents on that month that they were calculating, which is not true. There may be, out of that 600, there may be only 150 claims of it, because you've got the same mentally disturbed, mentally retarded people who are making repeat allegations, none of which, by the way, have any factual basis or can be supported by any evidence. So this is a very important point. They're not stating it, and they should. Now there's a website for this domestic violence, what would you call it, initiative, propaganda campaign, and it's portrayed or depicted as exclusively a white middle class problem. White supremacist, fascist, Nazi, middle class white men, straight white males, they're the problem. Now, I'll come to the real stats on that in a minute, but the website has unusually attractive women, very well dressed, very well turned out, and they're supposed to be the victims, and they obviously come from or at least the way the photographs are put together. They've got brand name clothes. They come from well-to-do circumstances. They're probably fashion models, because they're, again, unusually good looking and very slim, and obviously people have got a very good diet and that sort of young. There's none of them are over the age of 30, and now this is not the sort of people that's not the troglodytes that are on these government housing estates. They look nothing like these people. These women look like they come from some of the wealthier postcodes in the country. But that's the depiction there. So it's exclusively a white problem and a white women problem, when it's got nothing to do with that. And also this depiction that it's exclusively white men that are doing it. Of course, absolute nonsense, outrageous lies. So just looking at the real facts here, although white people make up 64% of the population in Australia now, they make up less than 15% of the DV incidents. So now, of that 15%, the majority of that 15% of the people, the white people who, the retarded people who are in these government housing estates. So the chances of a white middle class family having a domestic violence incident, other than a mutual one, I suppose, is about nil, or 1 or 2% or something. It's very low. Now the website also features, it announces in reverential terms that they've got some Asian lesbian activist who's coming along as the supreme propagandist to lecture white folks in the area about what heterosexual relationships should be. Really? You've got to be kidding me. The article and the website exhorts the people who are living, the citizens in this area, to inform on their neighbours that even the slightest suspicion of DV may or could exist. And the threshold is they may have heard a raised voice. That's it, domestic violence. The police will come in. Police, they've got no time to investigate robberies and burglaries and assaults in the street. They've got no time for that. But 3 of them will turn up within moments for this sort of thing. Or if you upset a transgender activist or something like that. It just goes to show you across the Western world that the police now are just globalist enforcers, that they don't even care about crime. Any domestic violence involving women only, such as women having there was a situation not long ago where there's a bunch of younger women, maybe senior high school, first year university, had this huge brawl in a car park, that's not separated. It's again, the propaganda is it's only white men that do it. Straight white men, they are the only ones. We won't look at anything else or consider anything else. Now, if you dig around the website for long enough, you can find a reference to gay, lesbian violence or women violence against men, that sort of stuff. But boy, do you have to dig around to find it. They could argue, oh no, it's there, but the reality is it's obscured from view. So anyway, that's the that's sort of the overview of that article. But I wanted to sort of just portray the dishonesty, and this is coming off the back of the media, the screaming media dishonesty about Kyle Rittenhouse and the case. And even now, they're still telling the most outrageous lies, that he went to disrupt, that Mr. Rittenhouse went to disrupt social justice activists who only wanted to protect black. But I mean, the lies is just insane. And this is just another example of that. So wherever you see these claims of domestic violence is off the charts and all these sort of things, the reality is that they're inflating the numbers. And just going over that, that again, the 611 cases that they claim was in one month was put together by a unit of activists. Wasn't put together by just the normal cop on the just on the desk at the police station or something like that. And there's no mention of that less than 20% of these allegations involved any sort of physical contact. But once you sort of put these facts out there and you make it clear that what's going on and put the proper context in there, then it's not a dramatic headline anymore. It says, oh well, okay, that's probably not. You probably expect something like that. These people in the housing estates are. To give you an idea of just how tough these housing estates are, every morning in these housing estates, there's a government unit that comes around, which is to ensure children attend school, and they often come with goons, heavy goons to come along to make sure that the children are attending school, and they have to physically go in. Seriously, this is how bad it is. They have to physically go into these estates with armed backup to go in and physically put the children in a limo or in a small minibus to take them to school. That's just how tough these areas are, and this is where the nearly all the allegations of violence are coming from. And I don't doubt it. There probably are instances of violence. I would think most of it's mutual, given the sort of troglodyte, women that populate those sort of things. Some of them are, absolutely huge. But even so, it's this idea that it's a middle class, straight white male problem is absolute nonsense. But this is the unrelenting propaganda that's pushed at us. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.